Hello, adventurer. It's good to see you. You have made it to the morning grind.
Welcome, welcome.
It's the live stream at the beginning of the Geekverse, where we talk about all types of topics in geekdom, gaming, and fantasy, with an emphasis on being constructive and creating the things that we want to exist in the world.
It's all on the grind, Sizemore. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of adventures to be had today. Dungeons to explore and monsters to slay, and who knows what a random encounter might send our way. That's why we have to prepare, so settle in now for the morning grind with your favorite beverage in hand.
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Whatever you want. Pull up a chair.
Oh, dude. Oh.
If you're feeling fancy, how about a cappuccino? Or a frappuccino? Or how about an espresso?
Just tea, thank you.
Sounds good to me, Gandalf. Whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here.
Everyone is welcome. You can just watch if you want. You don't have to worship anything you don't want to worship.
Thank you, Mike. But be forewarned.
Sometimes we get really strange characters around here.
Wait, what's that you say? Why can't you come and be a part of the stream?
My wife would disown me.
Oh no, I bet she'll be fine with it. Come on in.
Am I scared for my safety? No.
What are we supposed to do?
Everybody do the secret handshake.
Secret cultist handshake.
Oh, now do wizards who love each other.
This, my friend, is a science.
I still don't have gifts, but it's fine.
It's all on the grind, son. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
Dude, this would be a sick place to bring the band.
Indeed it would be, Dave. It really would. I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome, glad to have you here. Oh, look, here's someone new.
Is this the cultist meetup?
Yes it is.
Come to hang out? Please accept me. I have nothing else.
Okay, we accept you. Everyone's welcome here.
Brought some snacks.
Well, that makes things even better.
You want some coffee? I don't drink coffee. You sure? It's cultist coffee. What makes it cultist coffee? I'm a cultist and I'm drinking it. Oh. Then I'll have some.
What exactly is going on here?
I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. It's so great to have you. Oh, and look, here comes another stranger.
Can we help you?
Yes, fellow cultists. I could really use some food.
Oh yeah? Welcome. We have donuts.
Oh, it's me. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sure you have a few questions for me, though.
What's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
Great questions, Rob.
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
No, not really. I'm just Heath, and I won't be worshiping anything this morning. But I will be your host. Welcome to the office. We're going to have a great time. I've got my coffee ready, because now it's time for the morning grind.
If you could become a fish, that would be amazing. Then I could command you with my mental fish powers.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It is good to see you. I have fallen into a pattern where I am a few minutes late. Because I've been up this morning working in the coffee shop. Doug and Retro Nerd Girl were there getting stuff done. I was actually, this morning, I was dug in for the first time into some tutorials on the Comfy UI for image generation. I had been working on this music video for the cultist, the You Can't Summon Cthulhu with Sour Cream and Onion music video. And I was almost done with it. I could probably get it done in another like 3-hour work session or something, I think. But also, I've been doing those kind of projects to kind of get the status of, what's the AI level, that we're at. Periodically I'll do another project just to see, and I could finish it off with my existing knowledge, but there were still some things that I couldn't do. And I was like, maybe I should go ahead and try to get into the Comfy UI, which allows you to like more directly interface with the open source models and so forth. And so I went ahead and took the time, even though it feels like you're not being productive because nothing got done, to go through the Comfy UI tutorials and see how that was. So I did that. So yeah, and yesterday, nope. Yeah, I feel like I haven't been productive because Friday night I went to a concert. I posted some pictures in the Discord channel. I haven't been to a concert in 15 years probably. And I went to see Sister Hazel. They were at Avondale Brewing in Birmingham. And so my brother, his wife, the nephews all went and went to see Sister Hazel. So I was out all Friday night. Had a great time though. It was really fantastic. Then Saturday was at the winery and then came back and got home kind of late. So I feel like I haven't, and I slept past the hanging out in the coffee shop Saturday morning because I had gotten in so late. So now I'm finally feeling like I'm getting back to it now. So welcome to my home, welcome to the office, and welcome to the morning grind. Let's see, we've got PH here. There we go. Good morning, PH. Good morning, James. Good morning. We've got Sable Phoenix with Zero the Blade, Sable Phoenix, and Mike. Although it does seem like Sable Phoenix is injured. Sable says, I woke my mom's dog this morning. They put my back out, trying to move as little as possible now. Oh, that's not good. It was a very chill concert. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was actually a good one to take the nephews to. I mean, it was kind of fun that they'll take the nephews to concerts. They're like first and fourth grade. Not to just any concert, but to a concert like that, a smaller concert venue at like Avondale. It was great having them. And fun memories, I think. Today, we are going to be taking a look at this. This is Warhammer Quest. So we're continuing our kind of deep analysis into adventure games. And we went through just about every component of Advanced Hero Quest. So now we're going to be looking at Warhammer Quest. This is the original. I don't really see the need to look at a whole bunch of different versions of Warhammer Quest. The original here, I never got to play, and I don't have it. But there are all kinds of ways online to play it. And there was even a link in the Discord server that was put so you could download the rules and also get like print and play items together for the original. There have been other releases of Warhammer Quest. And a few years ago, I did get one of the later releases, and I was just not impressed with it. I was like, oh, okay, let me see what they're doing with Hero Quest, with the Warhammer Quest, rather. Let's try to go a bit deeper into this, and hopefully, it might be even a better game. Now we got several revisions. Well, that hasn't really been the way that Games Workshop and some other game publishing companies have been going. The further iterations of these things haven't necessarily gotten any better. So I did flip through and read through some of the Warhammer Quest rules before. It's been a little while. And I was like, okay, this is much better than the version that I bought. I didn't really like it. It felt like the classic kind of like watered down kind of thing. So I was really had a lot of hope for it, but it really didn't work out too well. So that's what we're going to take a look at. We thought, or I thought originally when I was doing this, that like, what's the relationship between Warhammer Quest and the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing? I thought that perhaps the role-playing came after this, but we found out that wasn't actually true. It was very interesting that the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing had come first, even before Advanced Hero Quest. And that's why, Warhammer, the Advanced Hero Quest was very crunchy. There was a lot more to it. It was a very different kind of game than I was expecting when I was like, oh yeah, Advanced Hero Quest, years ago. Let's get that. In some ways, it was a lot more like a role-playing game in a box. But that was because we found out that they had the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing quest, Warhammer Fantasy role-playing before Advanced Hero Quest. And so that was kind of an adaptation of this. Now, I think, as I was reading through it, kind of trying to come up with a lineage of these things, I think that Warhammer Quest is a better game than Advanced Hero Quest. I had Advanced Hero Quest, but I never got it to the table. But it seems like Warhammer Quest then is going to take what was done with with Advanced Hero Quest and probably other information from the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game and kind of massage it and streamline it and simplify it, but this time in a good way. So I think that's what's happened here. So I think I think some of the problems that we were having with Advanced Hero Quest aren't present here. As I recall, if I remember, like it's complexity level of rules and things like this, I bet that I could have gotten Warhammer Quest to the table with my gaming group, which is basically the family. Whereas I tried a couple of times to get Advanced Hero Quest off the ground, and it never worked. Hey, Tomocrat, good morning. So that is our main topic for discussion for today, and I have paper here to take some notes. Let's do a breathe and sip before we get into our main topic. I've got water this morning. I've got some ice water this morning. So whatever your favorite beverage is, let's do 2 deep inhales in through the nose and then complete exhales out through the mouth. And then we will take a sip of our favorite beverage this morning. So let's go. Let's breathe. And breathe. There we go. All right. So has anybody played this one here? This one's probably been one that people have played more than Advanced Hero Quest. There is a lot in here. I also think I remember, like, okay, like this, the Barbarian. So we've got, I mean, there's a lot of information that is like world building kinds of information in here, as I recall. And I don't really see a great need to go through all of that. We're primarily taking a look at the rules sections here. But yeah, I mean, this starts off like the Barbarian, the land of Norska. I don't know if they've really developed that in a lot of the Warhammer world. But we got the Barbarian, talking about the Warhammer world being a revision or a fantasy version of our world. The land of Norska lies north of the Empire across the Sea of Claws. The dwarf, so classic heroes we're going in with, Barbarian, dwarf, right there. All right, so what does our table of contents look like? I don't have the physical box. The first thing we did with Advanced Hero Quest was take a look at what was actually in the physical box, and I just don't have that for Warhammer Quest. So we got an overview of what's in the Warhammer box right here, an introduction, then an overview of what's in the Warhammer box, an overview of everything that has to do with the warriors, starting the game, sequence of play, power phase, warrior phase, monster phase, exploration phase, the end. Okay, rules for combat are over here, and spell casting. This is not that long of a book. This is only, this is only 36 pages. The PDF is only 36 pages. There's our explanation of the wizard and the wizard and the elf. So this one now, because there are some other books that come with this as well. I believe there was an adventure book, and then I like the way that they did this. This could be something that we could use. Since they divided the rule book for the adventure game part of this from like the expansion, which has the more role-playing elements in it. Oh, Mike says, many years ago I played this game, but I have forgotten how it was played. It's been so long. And David May says, David May's played both Advanced Hero Quest and Warhammer Quest from 1995. So is that when this one came out? This should be, I bet that's this one. Let's see. Yep, this is copyright 1995. So this came out in 1995. Okay. So I think we know what the introduction to this would be. So what did this come with? This came with a better assortment of monsters. That was one of the complaints with Advanced Hero Quest that I had, was that after getting this nice assortment of monsters for the original Hero Quest game, we were short on monsters. We just had some Skaven in the Advanced Hero Quest book. There we go. Still playing around with some different lighting right here. So this came with the Barbarian, Elf, and Wizard. 6 orc warrior models, 6 orc archer models, 6 goblin spearman models, 6 knight goblin archer models, 12 skaven, 3 minotaurs, 12 giant bats, 12 giant spiders, 12 giant rats, and 12 snotlings. So that's already a plus. Ha. James Bacon says the guy on the cover looks like fantasy Lehman Russ. He's the Primarch of the Space Wolves in 40K. Huh. And I guess the guy for who the Lehman Russ battle tank was named after. So this one, if you have that box, that's already a fantastic assortment of monsters to have a bunch of different adventures. I already approve. They come on bases. Okay, board sections. Unlike conventional board games where the board is set up every time, the Warhammer Quest board is made up of separate pieces that can be arranged in hundreds of different ways. In other words, every dungeon that the warriors explore will be new and exciting. There are 3 different types of board sections: dungeon rooms, objective rooms, and corridors. The difference between these 3 types of board sections, however each is used, is explained in more detail later in the rules. So we've got the objective room, the idle room. All objective rooms are 8 squares by 4 squares. Dungeon room, Well of Doom. All dungeon rooms are 4 squares by 4 squares. Corridor, corner, corridor T junction, and corridor passageway, as well as corridor steps. We've got information on the kinds of bad guys here. Like I said, we already know that kind of information. Okay, card decks. What kind of card decks? See, this one, hey, RPG Exile. Good morning, good morning. Oh, okay, so yes, this is the tank guy. Yes. PH says, okay, later on. Okay, 41st millennium. Role-playing means I smash your head with a hammer. I cleave your skull with my pick. Role-playing meaning I smash your head with my hammer. I cleave your skull with my pick, or I slice your face with my sword. Right, you get to make those kinds of decisions. Okay, so this game is much more card-based than it is table-based. So the card decks, what does it come with? Card decks. Warhammer Quest comes with 3 different packs of cards: the dungeon cards, the event cards, the treasure cards. So I think we had moved past the, hey, we need to roll on 1 million different tables in the series in order to create this game. Warhammer Quest comes in 3 different packs of cards: dungeon cards, event cards, and treasure cards. Note, however, that for manufacturing reasons, the cards are supplied in 2 packs in the box. The dungeon pack is split across 2 packs and must be separated out before you play. Okay. We'll explain how to use these cards later. Treasure card, event card, dungeon card. We also have spell cards. The wizard character in the Warhammer Quest game has the ability to cast magic spells. They are represented by cards which are held by the wizard player. Full details of the spell card and wizard characters are given in the spellcasting section. Dice. The Warhammer Quest comes with a number of 6-sided dice in 2 different sizes. So this game, we return to the classic, no custom dice, which was also a failure of Advanced Hero Quest, I thought. But in this game, now we return to 6-sided dice that Warhammer and Games Workshop loves so much. Jason caught up with the breathe and sip. So it says the larger dice are used extensively in the game to resolve combat, and whenever a die roll is required. The smaller colored dice are not rolled, but placed next to models or on record sheets to keep track of various game details. For example, a small die is placed by a monster to show how many wounds he has left during combat. As the 2 dice are different size and color, there's no danger of confusing them while you play. For convenience, especially on cards and tables where space is limited, we refer to 6-sided dice as D6. Okay, how to roll dice, we got that. Adventure record sheets. In the Warhammer Quest box, you'll find a pad of 50 adventure record sheets. You can use these while you play to record details of your character, such as how much gold they have collected. Wounds, gold, and notes. Okay, rule book. This is the rule book. There's also an adventure book. The adventure book contains 30 complete Warhammer Quest adventures for you to play. So we might end up having to take a look at that too, but that's not in this book. At the back of the adventure book, you'll find a useful play sheet which summarizes the most important rules of the game. After a while, you'll be able to play Warhammer Quest just by using the play sheet rather than the rule book, although you will find it necessary to consult the rule book occasionally for more details or full explanations. And then this came with a role play book. So this says the role play book develops the Warhammer Quest rules and has a lot of new things for your warriors to do. I like that setup. You can use as few or as many of these extra rules as you like, and you don't have to use any if you don't want to. However, you certainly want to wait until you've learned the rules in the rule book first. For now, leave the role play book in the box until you have a few games in full. Note that some of these counters in the box are useful with the special rules in the role play book, so you won't need them for the moment. Okay, so I like that, separating out these rules from the role playing book. This is the monetizing. This is how you monetize your players. Give them the play pad they'll want to replenish when they run out. I remember that being a major concern with all different kinds of games. In fact, I remember that being a major use for the internet for us. One of the first practical uses of the internet is that you could go and get more of the consumable, sheets to print out. Although it was also a big deal when we got access to a scanner. So we were always like, okay, we have to keep one of the Hero Quest game sheets in pristine condition. And then like one of my uncles took it to work and was able to scan it and print more. And that was like, wow. Now, I mean, that was living in the future right there. So card markers and counters. Warhammer Quest comes with a large number of special tokens, markers, and counters. These are used to determine the effects of spells, mark locations, and keep track of various details during the game. They're explained more fully in the relevant sections of the game. The counter and markers you'll need straight away are shown below. Warrior cards, equipment cards, and warrior counters. Oh, we've got cave-in marker. This marker is useful when the cave-in has occurred in the dungeon. Power token used by the wizard when he's casting spells. The Pit of Despair marker. At the Pit of Despair is a spell the wizard can cast. This marker is used to show the area of the magic pit that the spell creates. Webbed counters. These counters are used when the warriors are attacked by giant spiders. Place one next to any warrior caught in a web. Portcullis marker. This marker will fit in a dungeon doorway to show where the portcullis has fallen. And then a pit marker used to show the location of a pit. Bacon Gaming says, that was our house too. We ended up with a folder in my dad's filing cabinet with all the different sheets we saved. Hey, good morning, Retro. Good morning. Yep. Oh, so Mike says the adventure book has blank character sheets and whatnot. Okay, so for up to 4 players, we've got information on painting the models right here. And now we talk about into the warriors. This game also seems like it gets us into this book seems like it gets us into the game pretty well. Okay, so it says each character in the Warhammer Quest game has its own unique skills. Some, such as the barbarian and the dwarf, are best suited to the frenzy of hand-to-hand combat. Others, such as the elf and the wizard, are better suited to standing off from the thick of the fighting and using arrows or spells. To succeed in their adventure, the warriors must work together as a team. In Warhammer Quest, each player takes the role of each one of the warriors: the barbarian, the dwarf, the elf, and the wizard. The warriors' different abilities and skills are represented in the game by 8 different characteristics. So we're going back to classic Games Workshop Warhammer stat blocks here. And we had a lot of that in the original Warhammer Advanced Hero Quest we looked at. Jason says, I remember getting copies at the Kinko printing shops at 5 to 10 cents a copy. Now I can print all of those things for my home printer. I remember paying 5 or 10 cents a copy too. Kinko's was a big thing. I actually remember going with my uncle to a Kinko's copy to print off a bunch of stuff that we needed, or to copy a bunch of the stuff that we needed actually on the copier. But I also remember that there was a grocery store that had copies for 5 or 10 cents. And I remember copying a bunch of MERP stuff. The stuff out of the back of the MERP book. PH says, when I got access to the internet, I was 15. My first priority was not getting gaming sheets. Okay, so each characteristic is measured on a scale of 1 to 10. If a warrior is very strong, he will have a high strength characteristic value. If he's very tough, he will have a high toughness characteristic value, and so on. The 8 characteristics are wounds, movement, weapon skill, ballistic skill, toughness, strength, initiative, and attacks. Taken together, these are your profile. So, standard Warhammer stuff here. Wounds, how much damage a warrior can take before he's killed and knocked out of the game. You can have, actually says you can have more than 10 wounds. Okay, now this says the average number of wounds a warrior has at the start of the game is 11, which is more than an advanced hero quest. We were looking at 3s and 4s, right? During play, your warrior will lose wounds as he fights monsters, falls victims to traps, or suffers other wounds and perils. Movement. This shows how far a warrior may move in one turn of the game. The higher his movement value, the further he can move. Weapon skill, ballistic skill, we know about that. Strength, and also we have toughness here. So toughness returns. Toughness kind of confused us in the beginning with Advanced Hero Quest. It was present, it was there, but I think we're more direct here. Mike says there was a local print shop that would charge me 7 cents, and I always assumed there were gamers there as they took extra effort to get the quality copies for my games. I think that was a big use. I remember actually seeing other people like printing off game cards and things like that at Kinko's. Even when we were developing like War of Kings. We've got initiative, how quickly you can react to danger, attacks, the number of attacks you can attack in a turn. Each warrior's profile is printed on a warrior card. The card lists all the characteristics and also indicates any special rules that apply to the warrior, along with his equipment and armor. On the back of each card, there's a description of the warrior, which tells you more about him. The warrior card for the barbarian is shown below. You'll notice his profile is given to the top of the left-hand side. Some of the values may seem a little confusing right now, but don't worry, we will explain what they mean. So you will also need to use one of the adventure record sheets as the warrior card for your warrior. The adventure record is to keep track of how much gold you've collected, how many wounds your warrior has suffered, and other details. Each warrior starts the game with different pieces of equipment. The barbarian has a lantern, the dwarf carries the rope, the elf has the magic potion, and the wizard has a magic scroll, which enables him to cast a powerful spell. These items are represented by equipment cards. During play, the appropriate card is placed by the side of each warrior's record card. Each equipment card contains all the special rules for that piece of equipment. So here's what it looks like. Profile going down: wounds, move, weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, initiative, and attacks. Wounds, so in this case, it's D6 plus 9. So you're going to have to roll for this, it looks like. Your total wounds are D6 plus 9, move of 4, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 5 plus, strength 4, toughness 3, 4. That probably has something to do with armor, initiative 3, and then attacks 1 plus 1. Oh, we will definitely take a look and go over and also take a look at the role play book. Yeah, we will. Weapons. Okay, equipment, lantern, weapon. Okay, the sword causes 1d6 plus 4 wounds. Okay, that's okay. All right. So we're telling how many wounds does the sword cause? Armor, thick furs, giving him plus 1 toughness. Okay, that's why we're up plus 1. Pinning, breaks from pinning on a roll of 6 plus. I don't know what that is. We'll have to see. Okay, it says special rules. Each turn before he fights, there's a chance the barbarian may go berserk. Roll a die and add plus 1 to the score for every slain monster. Model on his adventure record sheet. If his total score is 6 or more, the barbarian goes berserk until the combat is over. While berserk, he gets 1 extra attack every turn. Oh, that's why we got the plus 1 over here. So before he fights, plus 1, so I guess you're keeping track of the number of monsters you kill. However, if he rolls a 1, then regardless of how many monsters he has on his adventure sheet, disaster strikes. The barbarian is so maddened with bloodlust that all he does this turn is slash wildly about him, causing 1 wound on every adjacent warrior. No modifiers. Oh. Oh, PH says, by the way, I started GMing DC 20 version 0.8. I really enjoyed it. I had only 2 players to start, a wizard and a cleric facing 3 skeletons and a bear. I thought that they would die, but after understanding how to work together, they managed to get the upper hand and win the combat. Lots of fun, though. Lots of choices and strategic possibilities. Oh, yeah. Well, I would like to try that out, too. Like we said, there was a lot that we liked about DC 20. Hey, good morning, Robert. I just realized I crunched a bunch of ice into the microphone. Sorry about that. Okay, combat table shows the score required to hit a warrior. Required hit by the warrior when he shows the score required by the warrior to hit an enemy he is fighting. Look up the enemy's weapon skill on the top row, and the number beneath is the score you need to hit. So that's also laid out like Advanced Hero Quest. Enemy's weapon skill. Here's your line. Picture a portrait of the warrior in all his glory. Pinning. How to escape from enemies. Special rules. Any special rules that apply to the warrior? Okay. This seems like a game. I mean, this already seems like a game that you could just pick up much more easily than did Advanced Hero Quest. So now we're already into starting the game. Most board games have a set objective that is the same every time you play, with one player emerging as the winner. This is not the case in Warhammer Quest. Instead, you use the adventure book to discover what the warriors must do to win the game. It may be that you have to rescue a prisoner, kill a vicious minotaur, or find a long-lost treasure. Unlike most other games, in Warhammer Quest, there's no single winner. Okay, we know all about that. Choosing a warrior. Pick which one you want to play. Okay. Starting equipment. Each warrior carries a different item of equipment at the start of the game, as shown on his warrior card. The barbarian has the lantern, the dwarf has the rope, the elf carries the healing potion, and the wizard has the Hand of Death scroll. Each player takes the equipment card for the warrior and places it next to his adventure record. Lantern and leader. The most important piece of equipment in the game is the lantern. The warrior who carries it lights the way for the other warriors and therefore leads the other warriors into the depths of the dungeon. It is usual for the barbarian to carry the lantern. If 3 or more players are available, then it's possible to play without the barbarian. In this case, one of the other warriors must carry the lantern as well as his own equipment. Either decide among yourselves which player will lead the party or roll a die to determine. Okay, we do have wounds. This is about rolling for wounds. The next thing to do is determine the wound value for each warrior. Once established, this value is referred to as the warrior's starting wounds. The player consults the profile on his warrior card. The wounds entry indicates that you should roll a die and add a number to the score. For example, the barbarian rolls a dice and adds, this is also using dice as singular, and adds 9, giving him a potential starting wound total between 10 and 15. If you get a 1, you're allowed to roll again, but you must keep the score of your next dice roll, even if it's another 1. Once you've determined your starting wounds, write the number in the box marked starting wounds on your adventure record. The larger box, I wonder why they did it that way. And why not just give the heroes a standard starting wound numbers? Oh, Mike says Ash on Guerrilla Miniature Games has a series of playthroughs using role-playing rules. At least some of them, as I recall, for the original 95 Hero Quest. For instance, your warrior starting wounds is 14, and he suffers 3 wounds in a fight. You have 3 left. Okay. It's possible for warriors to heal wounds during the game, so your total can go up as well as down. But you can't have more than your starting number. Wizard special rules. Before the game begins, the wizard must select 3 spells. Split the spell deck into 3 types: attack spells, defense spells, and healing spells, and shuffle each deck. These are the wizard's 3 spells for the game. Oh, then shuffle each deck. The wizard then takes 1 of each type at random. Oh, so you are a random assortment. You get an attack spell, a defense spell, and a healing spell. These are the 3 wizard's spell. These are the wizard spells. Place the rest back in the box. Each spell card has a summary of the spell's effects and casting number. The higher the casting number, the harder to cast the spell. Full details in the spell cards and wizard cards are given in the spell casting section. I think the spell casting system is going to be improved in this game. Once he has taken his spells, the wizard player rolls 1d6 and takes that number of power tokens. He may re-roll if he gets a 1, but must stick with the second number if he rolls, I guess, 1 again. The power tokens are placed on the wizard warrior's card in the space provided. Power tokens represent an inner magical force that the wizard can draw upon during the adventure. The more powerful power tokens a wizard has, the more certain he can be of casting a spell. The rules that describe how to cast spells and how to use the power tokens are in spellcasting. The warriors are almost ready to undertake their first quest adventure. Before they can descend into the depths of the dungeon, you must sort out all the various dungeon board sections and card decks. First, sort the board sections into 3 piles: dungeon rooms, objective rooms, and corridors. Dungeon rooms are all 4x4 squares, while the objective rooms are 8x4. All other sections, steps, passages, and junctions are classed as corridors. Next, sort out the 3 decks of cards: the dungeon deck, the event deck, and the treasure deck. To begin with, take the dungeon deck and remove the 5 cards that represent the objective rooms: the Fountain of Light, the Tomb Chamber, the Idol Chamber, the Fighting Pit, and the Fire Chasm. Now shuffle each deck thoroughly and place each one face down at the start of the table within easy reach. Finally, separate the different models so that you can easily find them while playing. So we've shuffled the 3 decks. We've taken out of the dungeon deck the objective room. So, like, how do you build your dungeon? I want to know. Okay, so the adventure begins. The warriors are ready to begin their adventure. They will enter the dungeon by means of a hidden passage, cave, mouth, or secret door. They must explore the sprawling dungeon, fight the monsters they find, and overcome whatever perils they uncover before they complete their appointed task. Before the warriors set foot in the dungeon, you must determine which adventure you will undertake. You will need to refer to the adventure book, which contains the instructions for 30 complete adventures. There are 6 adventures for each of the 5 objective rooms. Start the adventure. Take the 5 objective room playing cards and shuffle them. Pick one at random and put the rest back in the box. The goal of your adventure lies in the room you have chosen. So pick out one of these objective cards at random. Find the section of the adventure book that contains the adventures for your objective room. Roll 1d6 to determine which adventure your warriors will undertake. For instance, if you pick the Fire Chasm objective room card, turn to the Fire Chasm in the adventure section on page 3 of the adventure book, and you roll a 1, you'll be playing the Destroy the Warpstone Icon adventure. Shuffle the dungeon cards and deal out 6 face down. Okay, now I like constructing the deck in this way. So shuffle the dungeon cards, deal out 6 face down. Now take your chosen objective room and shuffle it in with the 6 cards you have just dealt. Finally, deal a further 6 dungeon cards on top of the 7 you already have. You should now have 13 cards, and your objective lies somewhere among the final 7, but who knows where exactly. The remaining dungeon cards are not used and may be returned to the box. The 13 cards, including the objective room, form the dungeon deck for the adventure. So there you go. That is controlling the number of rooms that are going to be in this dungeon. So in this case, it looks like it's always the same. We're not doing some that are larger than others. But in this case, we are establishing at the beginning I guess it's not a 13-room dungeon because some of those could be corridors. I'm guessing that's what's going to be out there. Establish the number of rooms more generally, or sections in the dungeon. By the number of cards you've got. And you've intentionally shuffled the objective room somewhere in the bottom 6. So you can't just walk in and find the dungeon room. In the bottom 6. You're going to have to go through at least 6 rooms before you could possibly come up with an objective card. What do you think about that? Yes, Mike says this also makes dungeon generation a lot quicker. It does. I like this. Maybe there's even a way to improve on the card generation. So then you turn over the top card from the dungeon deck. This is the entrance to the dungeon. Place the corresponding board section in the middle of the table or playing area. Now attach the doorways as indicated on the card and clip them onto it. The doorways position are marked in white on the picture of the room on the dungeon card. I guess we'll take a look at those and find a picture of those in a moment. But so that tells you, the card tells you where your door, there's no need to roll on a separate room table, separate door table and all that. Not doing that. Ugh. Stretch. Place the model representing the leader, the warrior with the lantern, in any square on the entrance board section. Now place the rest of the warrior models on the board, starting with the warrior who has the highest initiative order, and then the next, and so on. Each model can start in any square. Now the adventure begins. Seems fast. Seems fast. And I like that. I like that. David May says, oh, hey, Gamers Quest. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you. David says, the cards are quicker, but allow far less variety. Yeah. How can we increase variety with the cards? Do we need to? Gamers Quest says, Warhammer Quest, my second favorite game of all time, second only to Hero Quest. Now, I think the Axiom Quest cards are over there someplace. But, you know, he had different sets of cards for different types of adventures. So it seems like if you had more cards and if you had them marked, see, this was something that I brought up to Axiom Quest, more cards. But as in different expansions. So maybe you always use the core quest cards. But if you're going into the icy north, then you have cards that on the face of the cards, not on the back, because you don't want to know what they are when you're drawing them. On the face of the cards, they would have an indicator that they're ice quest. That way you can flip through it really easily and take out the cards that you're not doing. And you don't have to worry about like consulting some list in the rule book about which cards belong in which set. And then you shuffle in some number of Ice Quest cards, or you shuffle in some number of Mordor cards or something like that. I think that's the way you do it. So yeah, we expand with more cards, because even if you're only playing with 13 per deck, and it seems like you could also have a 13 cards, but the dungeon could tell you how many cards the dungeon is. So a short game would have less cards. The dungeon has. And some dungeons, if they're large enough, you could use the same kind of deck construction method, could have a secondary objective or a secondary room, you know, special room or whatever that you shuffle into the middle third or something like that. I think that's fun. And of course, there'd be nothing that would stop you if there was somebody who was actually running something from pre-design, or you know, the idea about pre-designing something. I mean, it's still out there. So Talisman 4E has expansion icons on card faces like that. Okay, I don't know that one. But Gamers Quest says Warhammer Quest Silver Tower also uses icons and the card faces to inform dungeon deck construction as well. Really? Okay. See, which I probably banished the copy of Warhammer Quest that I bought to my back closet. But it was not that. It was not Silver Tower. Is there any modern Warhammer Quest that anybody recommends? The one that I got, Shadows of something? Warhammer Quest. Shadows over Hammerhall. Yeah, that was a 2017 release. I wasn't thrilled with it. I only tried to play it once. Silver Tower. When did that one come out? Oh, that was 2016. Is 2006 is the Silver Tower worth anything? Is it any good? So Gamers Quest says of the modern, I think Silver Tower is best. Okay. So the sequence of play. Okay, we got plenty of time here. Sequence of play. During the game, the warriors can search, move, fight, explore, cast spells, and even run away from the monsters they find. In the real world, this would all happen at once. As swords are drawn, doors are kicked open, bows are fired, and spells are cast. In the Warhammer Quest game, all these activities take place in a predetermined sequence of play. Warhammer Quest is played in a number of turns. During each turn, the warriors and the monsters all get a chance to do certain things, such as moving, fighting, casting spells, and so on. Each turn is divided into 4 phases. You must work through the phases in the correct order and complete each phase before moving on to the next. When all the phases of each turn are ended, the new turn begins. The turn sequence is summarized below. The next few pages deal with each phase in more detail. You don't understand everything. If you don't understand everything right now, don't worry. Everything will be explained as we go along. So we have the power phase. During this phase, the wizard determines how much magic power the wizard has available on that turn. He also determines whether or not any unexpected events occur. Warriors phase. During the Warriors phase, they can move, fight monsters, and prepare to explore further in the dungeon. Monster phase. If there are any monsters on the board, they can now move and fight during this phase. Oh, really? See, part of the rule set, I didn't think that the Shadows over Hammerhall was all that meaty. So it's the same type of rule set, but it does remove the need for a DM. It's entirely co-op and card driven. We might need to look at it for that reason. There's a lot of things to look at, but I would be interested in that. Blackstone Fortress is sci-fi version of this. Oh, Warhammer Quest, Blackstone Fortress. Did not know there was such a thing. So that's a co-op adventure. It's 40K. Warhammer Quest, Blackstone Fortress. Dark Quest in the 41st Millennium. They did not know they did that one. Monster phase. Okay, monsters do stuff. Exploration phase. During this phase, the warriors may try to determine what lies beyond an unexplored doorway. Once the exploration phase is complete, the turn is over. So we do have the 2 different sections here. Equipment and treasure. Each of the 4 warriors carries an item of equipment: the lantern, rope, healing potion, or magic scroll. You don't have to wait until a particular time to use these. They can be used at any time. For example, if the dwarf is badly wounded, the elf can use his healing potion to heal his companions. The elf model doesn't need to be next to the dwarf or even on the same board section. Oh, well, how convenient. The elf model doesn't need to be next to the dwarf or even on the same board section. The player simply hands the equipment card to the dwarf player who uses to heal the dwarf. The rules of each piece of equipment are described in its own card. The warriors find treasure during the game. That's very permissive, very permissive. Oh, you thought Blackstone Fortress is fantastic? Huh. Well, maybe I just got it done. Or maybe I didn't understand it or something like that. The warriors find treasure during the game, and some of this can also be used. For example, your warriors might discover a magic sword, a potion, a powerful arcane device. These treasures are represented by treasure cards. When a warrior wins a piece of treasure, the treasure card is placed next to his or her adventure record sheet. As with the rope, healing potion, etc., you can use these items anytime you wish. Note that some magic devices will only work a certain number of times, while others are given up when they're used, such as when you drink the potion. The other items are armor, shields, and weapons. Yeah. A few are magical, and these are very valuable. When you get armor, a shield, or weapon, you can use them straight away. A warrior cannot give or lend weapons or armor to other warriors except at the very end of a turn, and then only if there are no monsters on the board. Okay, so that's not as permissive. So you can give that up only at the end of a turn and when there are no monsters on the board. This means you can swap or allow other players to borrow a weapon or armor, but you can't do so in the middle of a fight. Note that although a warrior may have 2 sets of armor, several shields, and as many weapons as you like, he cannot use them all at once. Each extra items are stowed in the warrior's pack. A warrior who has 2 or more weapons can choose which one he wants to use each turn, but then has to use one weapon during any one turn. The rule of 6 and 1. The rule of 1 and 6 is the most important rule in the game. When making a dice roll for whatever reason and for whatever modifiers apply, a natural roll of 1 always fails and a natural roll of 6 always succeeds. That's important. Hey, Michael. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So that is important. 1 and 6. We've got automatic failure and automatic success. Power phase. The Warhammer world is full of monsters, evil sorcerers, great magic treasures, and mighty spells. The dungeon that lies before the adventurers harbors many dangerous foes, and the warriors will need all their skills to survive. During the power phase, the wizard player determines how much magic power the wizard has that turn. At the same time, he discovers whether an unexpected event occurs. Okay, so at the start of the power phase, the wizard player rolls 1d6 to determine his power level for the turn. Take a small die and place it next to the wizard warrior card, so the number rolled is shown on the upmost face. When the wizard uses his power to cast spells, the dice is turned so that it shows the amount of power he has left. But I think it's weird. This is tying some kind of unexpected dungeon event to the wizard's power roll. And you're not adding, by the way. So you're not adding this d6 to your power. You are turning your die to that number. You're not adding it. So that's what you've got. That's what you've got available. But if the wizard player scores a 1 when rolling for power, an unexpected event occurs. Yes, we do. Right. So this is the winds of magic. Right. Yes. The ebb and flow of the winds of magic. Very thematic. Yes. Using the winds of magic invites chaos. So that's what this is simulating from the world building perspective. Right. So we definitely have the winds of magic here. Turn over the top card of the when you roll a 1, turn over the top card of the event deck and follow the instructions. Sometimes you may find a clue to help you out in your quest, although it's more likely you'll meet some monsters. If the event card is a special event, it has an E on the top of the corner. Resolve it immediately as described on the card. If the event card is a group of monsters, the card has an M at the top corner. The warriors have been attacked. Look at the top card to see how many monsters there are. Take that many miniatures and place them on the board according to the rules for placing monsters in the next few pages. Keep the event card handy, as it has some information that you will need when the fight starts. So if the wizard does roll a 1, so if the wizard player does not roll a 1, then no unexpected event occurs this turn. So you may go straight to the warrior phase. Although it says, designers note, during playtest, the wizard player seemed to roll so many 1s, this phase quickly became known as the roll a 1 phase rather than the power phase. So your wizard's going to be down in power when this unexpected event occurs. Oh, placing monsters, that's next. When monsters attack the warriors, you must decide where to put them on the board. Monsters usually leap up upon the warrior as they move through the dungeon, appearing right next to them with no warning. The first time the warriors encounter some monsters, the leader places them. The next time monsters appear, the player to his right places them. After that, the player to the right places monsters, and so on. When you place the monsters, you can't just place them anywhere you like. That would be far too convenient for the warriors. The players must obey the one-on-one rule. This rule simply states that a group of monsters will always be shared equally between the warriors. Position each model facing a warrior as attacking, so this will help later when it comes to working out the combat. Often warriors will be outnumbered, and so you must share out the monsters as equally as possible. The diagram on page 16 shows you how to do this. Okay. Sometimes there are an odd number of monsters that can be placed, and they cannot be divided equally among the warriors. If this is the case, you must use the warrior counters to determine which warriors the spare monsters will fight. Place the 4 warrior counters in a mug or cup and give them a shake. Without looking, draw 1 warrior counter to determine who the monster attacks. If there's no space next to that particular warrior, draw another warrior counter until you find someone who still has adjacency. I think there's got to be a better way to place monsters. Especially since, I mean, this doesn't allow you to set up like a marching order. Because you're going to be someplace, and then all of a sudden, all the monsters are going to be around you. I liked the advanced hero quest about like when wandering monsters show up or something like that. That needs to be, what was the rule? As far as possible, but within sight. That was it. So that keeps. Oh, we rolled. All these monsters showed up, and they're all right next to us. Going through a door might be different or something, but that's the kind of thing I think about when we're reading something like this. It says when you're attacked by different kinds of monsters, you must share the different kinds evenly according to the one-on-one rule. For example, if the warriors are attacked by 4 goblins and 4 orcs, then each warrior must fight 1 orc and 1 goblin. Use the warrior counter to decide who is attacked by any odd monsters. Says, but the warriors aren't all in the same place. Sometimes the warriors may be split between different board sections when they are attacked by monsters. In this situation, take a warrior counter to determine where the monsters appear and place them in the board section that contains the warrior whose counter was drawn. For example, the elf is by himself in a corridor and an unexpected event results in an attack by some monsters. You draw the elf's warrior counter from the cup and the monsters are placed on that board section. All the monsters will attack the elf if they can. Only if you run out of room on that board section will the monsters spill over and attack the other warriors. So he says that note, this is a good idea for the warriors to stick together on the same board section, as this means the monsters will have to divide their forces to fight all the warriors. Monsters with missile weapons. An exception to the rule above is when the monsters are armed with bows or other long-range missile weapons. These monsters are placed as far away from the warriors as possible, whilst maintaining the same or adjoining board sections and still able to see their target. So I guess that's like crashing into the melee monsters, just crash into them. Yeah, and and Gamers Quest says, so in Advanced Hero Quest, you had to determine surprise. Right. And I don't see surprise in here. We have an adjudication of what we can see to determine whether or not a model can see a target or not. Draw an imaginary line from the center of the firer square to the center of the intended target square. If the line passes through a wall, the line of sight is blocked and the target may not be fired at. Oh, this does say other monsters and warriors may be fired through as if they were not there, as they are assumed to be moving all the time. Oh, that's also very permissive. Following an unexpected event, attacking monsters are placed on the board in the power phase as already described. The monsters do not fight until the monster phase, which comes after the warrior phase. This means, though, that the warriors get to attack first. This means the warriors will normally fight before the monsters. However, some monsters have a special attack which is resolved as soon as the monsters are placed. This is indicated on the card. Such monsters are very dangerous because they fight before the warriors have a chance to strike. Fortunately, most monsters which attack in this way are small and relatively weak, such as the giant bats. If the wizard is killed, some of the other players must roll for the unexpected event, although you're not concerned with wizard power anymore. So here is our what can be seen line of sight. Examples of placing monsters. This is also a lot of Skaven in here. Sometimes the warriors will be attacked by so many monsters there's not enough space to put them on the same board section. When this happens, the monsters may be placed in adjoining board sections. Should the warriors be attacked by so many monsters you cannot fit them on adjoining board sections, then those extra monsters will not be placed at all. That would be a lot. Gamers Quest, yes. Advanced Hero Quest had you determine surprise to assess how they'll be set up on the board. Yes. Warhammer Quest assumes the monsters simply emerge out of the shadows and only certain monsters are able to surprise attack first. That is a simplification. It assumes, I guess, the heroes are more competent, right? Okay, so we're about halfway through here. We are on the warriors phase. Let me get something. I'm going to get some more water. I'm going to keep going a little bit more. Hang with me here. I'm going to grab some more water. Let's do a Yeti hug break.
Oh, it's time for a Yeti hug break. Yeti hug break. Yeti hug break. Everybody go hug yo Yeti and show yo Yeti some love.
All right, here we go. Yeti hug break. For the Yeti hug break, I hugged my microphone as my dog is not sitting here right here. Yeah, my microphone. I figured your microphone must be a Yeti. All right, let's go for a little while longer here. Let's take a look at the Warriors phase because now we're kind of getting into it here. So during the Warriors phase, each of the players may move his warrior and attack monsters. The rules for combat and spell casting are given later. In this section, we're concerned only with what the players can do and the order in which they can do it. Who goes first? During the Warriors phase, each player takes a separate turn, one after the other. The warrior carrying the lantern, the leader, always goes first. Normally, this will be the barbarian. If the barbarian is killed, one of the other warriors must take the lantern, and he becomes the new leader. Once the leader has taken his turn, the other players take their turn and turn in initiative order. The warrior with the highest initiative goes first, and the next goes highest, and so on. The order will thus be the barbarian, the leader, the elf initiative 6, wizard initiative 3, dwarf initiative 2. Each warrior completes all of his movement and fighting before the next warrior takes his turn. The lantern. The lantern illuminates the board section. I wonder why we do this. I guess that other warriors, that when they come in, may have different initiatives and so might be inserted into a different order. But I also wonder how much does that really matter? Yeah, Gamer's Quest says it's a tiny, cramped dungeon. You turn a corner and bam, face to face with a bunch of Skaven. Kind of like being in the Misty Mountains in Goblin Town. Okay, so the lantern. The lantern illuminates the board section the leader is on, plus all adjacent board sections. If a warrior moves onto a board section that is not illuminated by the lantern or is left behind by the leader, he becomes lost in the dismal depths of the dungeon and is removed from the game. What do we think about this as an enforcement mechanism to keep the players together? If you move beyond the illumination of the lantern, you are lost in the depths of the dungeon and is removed from the game. This is obviously a very important rule and is worth remembering right from the start. If the warriors start to split up and go in different directions, some will end up lost in the dungeon. Always keep a careful eye on where the leader is and stick to the board sections that are lit with the lantern. My nephews have a habit of wandering off and splitting the party when we're playing Hero Quest. This prevents them from doing that. This kind of keeps you grouped together. Shadows of Brimstone has a similar mechanic. It reminds you, the beginning of this Be Right Back track reminds me of the Bloodhound Gang. I do remember that. All right, I'll have to try to not remember that. Because it may be a bad idea. I mean, if it's a bad idea to split the party, then, I mean, yes, you could just enforce that through the rule system. You've got to stay relatively close. On the other hand, if you want to do that's more like Dragon Strikes, something like that. Dragon Strike is, hey, yes, you can go off by yourself if you want to leave these guys at your own risk. Gamer's Quest. The difficulty level of Warhammer Quest really essential the heroes stay together. Michael Connor says about 20 minutes behind, there were expansion packs of monsters and adventures and dungeons, as well as individual characters and classes. Yes. And we're going to talk about that. Because I have, I've got them sitting over there. We're going to look at some of the character expansions on later morning grinds. I mean, when you're swarmed by that number of Skaven, I mean, man. During his turn, your warrior may move a number of squares equal to his move characteristic. When the warrior is moved, he may attack a monster in an adjacent square. You do not have to move the model the full distance allowed or even move at all. You may move in any direction, including diagonally, and you can position the model to face any direction you like. However, your warrior may not move through a square that contains another model or obstacle. So you can't even move through your friends in this one. Designer's note, some rooms, such as the idle room, for example, have different floor levels. In rules like this, the indicated path between the levels is the only route open to the warriors. In the idle room, for instance, the warriors can only reach the upper floor by going up one of the staircases. Unless the adventure book states otherwise, stairways and other routes like them are treated as if they were normal squares for the purposes of movement. Blocked diagonals. A warrior may not move diagonally into a square if one of the adjacent squares between him and the destination square is a wall. The diagram shows how this works. So you can't move diagonally and skirt that wall. You got to move around that. There. Oh, here's pinning. I was wondering what pinning was. So Gamer's Quest says level 0 heroes have a greater than 50%, maybe closer to 75% death rate in their first dungeon. I played 4 games before I had a hero survive. Wow. It gets a bit easier as the heroes level up. If there's a monster in a square adjacent to your warrior at the start of the warrior's phase, then your warrior is pinned by the monster and may not move. This represents your warrior standing his ground as he valiantly defends himself against the attacks of the opponent. Although a pinned warrior may not leave the square he's in, he may turn to face in any direction. Is facing a part of this? Does facing matter? Escape from pinning. As described above, a warrior is pinned in place if he starts the warrior's phase adjacent to a monster. However, he can try to escape from pinning if the player wishes. Each warrior card has a pinning value indicated on it. To escape from pinning, you must roll a die and score at least your pinning value. If successful, the warrior dodges out of the fight and is free to move normally. If unsuccessful, the warrior must stay where he is and fight the monster in hand-to-hand combat. He may not use a missile weapon while he is pinned. Note, no matter how many monsters pin a warrior in place, he only has to make one pinning roll to escape. When your warrior ends his move next to a monster, he may fight it. The rules for combat are described later in the combat section. Alternatively, the elf has a bow which he may shoot at a monster from a distance. As long as he can see the monster, he may shoot at it. A warrior cannot fight a monster at close quarters and shoot at it in the same turn. He must do one or the other. If the warrior moves up to a doorway which has no adjoining board section, they must halt. They cannot go through it. The door beyond the doorway has not yet been explored. The warriors may explore further in the dungeons in the exploration phase as described later. Okay. Dungeon entrance. If the dungeon entrance leads into the dungeon, it also leads out. If the adventurers wish to retrace their steps and leave via the dungeon entrance, they can do so, provided a course has not been blocked by a cave-in or a portcullis. Note that usually the warrior's objective will provide an alternative and easier way out, so it's rarely necessary for them to retrace their steps. When a warrior moves onto a new board section for the first time, it will be empty. However, there may be all manners of monsters lurking in the shadows of a room that do not reveal themselves until the warrior enters. Once a warrior has stepped into a new board section and completed his movement, he ends his turn immediately. Play now passes to the next warrior. Once all the warriors have completed their movement, it is time for the monsters. And where would we be without monsters? So if the warrior moves into a new room during the warrior's phase, you must begin the monster's phase by drawing a card from the event deck to see what's inside. If the card reveals monsters, they are always placed inside the room, even if the warriors are split up between several board sections. This is only necessary to draw a card, so that the random event was splitting it up, but not here. This is what's actually in that room. It is not necessary to draw a card when a room is entered for the first time. It is only necessary to draw a card when the room is entered for the first time, not on subsequent occasions. Note that a card is also taken when the warriors enter a dungeon room, not when they enter a passageway. Oh, so you do not draw a card for a passageway, stair, or other corridor section. Objective rooms have special rules. Okay. Dungeon rooms. They are all 4 squares by 4 squares. The first time the warriors enter the room, turn over the top card of the event deck, and discover what's inside. There are 2 kinds of cards: events and monsters. If an event occurs, follow the instructions on the card. If a monster is revealed, they pounce upon the warriors as described below. For a detailed explanation of placing monsters, see the power phase back on page 16. First, determine how many monsters appear according to their instructions on the top of the card. For example, if 2d6 monsters appear, roll 2 dice and add their scores together to get a total of between 2 and 12. Take the models and place them in the room. Keep this card handy as it has information you will need during the forthcoming combat. If there is not enough space in the room for all monsters, any left over may be positioned in adjoining board sections. Remember to apply the 1-on-1, sharing out monsters equally between the warriors. When you place a monster next to a warrior, turn the model so it faces the way the warrior is facing. This makes it cleaner when working out combat. Okay, so maybe facing doesn't actually have something to do in here. Objective room. The objective room lies at the end of the dungeon and contains the warrior's final goal. When the warriors enter the objective room, do not take a card from the event deck. Refer to the adventure book instead. The adventure book contains any special rules that are needed when the warrior reaches their objective. You will find the warrior's goal is guarded by many monsters which must be fought and defeated. Once a new monster has been placed on the board in the monster phase, their turn is over. They have expended their turn by leaping into position. They cannot move or fight until the monster phase the next turn. There you go. Monsters that appear in the power phase of the current turn can attack in the monsters phase the same turn. Okay, we need some monster AI here. So how do we do this? Apart from new monsters, as explained, we don't have a dungeon master here, right? Of course. So what does a monster do? Monsters always attack the warriors. Exactly what they do depends on where they are standing and what sort of weapon they are armed with. If a monster is pinned, it will not move. It remains where it is and fights the warrior next to it. If a monster has a missile weapon and can see a target, then it stays where it is and shoots. If a monster has a missile weapon but cannot see a target, it will move until it can see a target and then shoot. If a monster does not have a missile weapon, or it has a missile weapon but cannot move and see a target, then it will move toward one of the warriors. If the monster can move next to a warrior, it will attack him. Remember, monsters will move and attack according to the 1-on-1 rule when possible. Divide up the attacks equally. Monsters move in the same way as warriors, up to a number of squares equal to their move characteristic. When a monster has completed his move, he may attack any monsters in an adjacent square. Pinning works the same way as it did with heroes and monsters. It says this is the first attack rule. Monsters placed in the power phase as a result of unexpected events must obey the first attack rule in the following monster's phase. Monsters placed in the monster phase as a result of warriors entering the dungeon room must also obey the first attack rule during the next monster phase. The first attack rule simply states the monsters placed to attack a warrior will try to fight that warrior when they make their first attack. Even if the warrior has moved away, the monster will follow an attack if it possibly can. I guess that's still trying to keep the 1-on-1 going. The first attack rule overrides the normal 1-on-1 rule. The reason for this is that you have already decided which monsters will fight who when they are placed. Once this first attack is over, the 1-on-1 rule is used to determine who the monsters attack once more. Bear in mind that monsters are pinned in place if they start the monster's phase next to a warrior. Pinned monsters always stay where they are, regardless of the first attack rule. Okay, let's see what this example here is. Well, we're not actually rolling in here. Well, let's see. The warriors enter a room and discover a minotaur and 3 giant rats. That must be the R, rats, and a minotaur. As there are an odd number of monsters, the warrior counters are used to see which warriors are placed next to who. The minotaur leaps upon the elf, and the giant rat pounces the elf and the barbarian and the wizard. The lucky dwarf has not been attacked. Fortunately, the monsters do not get to fight this turn, as they have just been placed. The turn ends with the monsters and the warriors facing each other for a fight next turn. In the warriors phase the next turn, the warriors attack first, hoping to kill as many monsters as possible before the beasts can fight back. This also gives you always a chance to try to hack them down and cut their numbers down. The elf goes first. He can't be pinned, so he leaps aside and, that must be his special rule, moves into the corner where he will shoot at the minotaur, hurting it slightly. We'll explain how the attack works later on. The barbarian goes next, followed by the wizard and then the dwarf. The barbarian kills a rat, but his wizard and the dwarf miss. Now it's the monsters phase. They were put on the board last turn, so this is the first time they can actually attack the warriors. Because this is the case, the first attack rule applies, so the monsters attack the warriors they are originally placed next to if they can. The wizard has not moved, so his rat attacks him where he is, luckily missing. The only other monsters left are the 2 that will be placed next to the elf, the minotaur and the rat. The rat is pinned by the dwarf, so instead of moving and attacking the elf, so it has to attack the dwarf rather than the elf. The minotaur isn't pinned to anybody, so it hurls itself across the room to attack the elf. Note that in this example, the dwarf player would no doubt be cursing the elf player. Although no monsters were placed next to him, the elf moved away, forcing the rat to attack the dwarf, who would otherwise have gotten away without being attacked at all. All right. Well, that takes us about halfway through. So I guess we will continue taking a look at this on Wednesday morning. We'll take a look at the exploration phase. I'm already liking it. I'm already liking it. I'm like, hey, what kind of you start? It's got like a base kind of game or something like that. I'm starting to like. I'm thinking you start here. I like advanced. I like Warhammer Quest. I mean, there's a lot to like about Advanced Hero Quest, but there's also so much that is cumbersome and that I didn't particularly like. This game would get on the table. So I think this is a reasonable base to be more like Advanced Hero Quest. There's clearly something that's more advanced here, but I think if I had bought this, it would have gotten on the table. What do you think? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody who's been joining me this morning. It has been great to be here with you live. It has also welcomed anybody who comes and watches on replay. Please do come and hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed, please do. We'll be back here on Wednesday. Here's a link to the Discord server, RavenKeep Discord. I've got a lot to do today, although I might be going over to my brother's house to play Hero Quest. The nephews wanted to play Hero Quest. When we were talking about that at the concert the other day. And so I don't know. I'll see if my brother texts me or something like that. But anyway, lots to do, lots to get back to as far as creating stuff. Maybe we can get that music video done, but who knows? Might be going out to play a game. So, all right. Yeah, Robert says maybe just use the basic rules, either a few of the enhancements. Yeah, because we'll have to see what's added on. I like that they've got the add-on with the role play book. All right. I am out of here. Have a wonderful afternoon. Go forth, be creative, be constructive, and grind on. Later.